今日はすごい楽しみのゲスト、マイケル・スケーラー、アメリカから、今日仙台本社に来て、マイケルは新しいテクノロジーで、ヒーリングだったり、エネルギーエンハンスメントシステムという、エネルギーエンハンスメントシステムという、機械というかテクノロジーを、開発者の息子です。で今日、日本初の EE システムは、ボリプラスト本社に入れてでこれから、みんなにいろいろ試してみたり、あとは、健康につながる、新しい発見がいっぱい出ると思うんで、とてもワクワクにしています。で、これからちょっと英語でインタビューさせます。よろしくお願いします。Michael, thank you for coming to Japan.
My pleasure.
So this is your first installation in Japan after Korea, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was just in Korea, and Paul here is training to assist us with being a tech. And you also provided someone locally that we will be training, so the Asian market will have close access to someone that can assist if need be.
Yeah, it's great. Can you tell me a little bit about the history of the EE system? When it was, how it was born and how it developed over the years?
I'll kind of nutshell the broad history, but sometime in the 70s or 80s, my mom created the first healing light chamber using biophotonics, and it resembled more of like what people would see as a tanning bed. Back then there wasn't a whole lot of technology past like light bulbs and things like that. So she created her first one then, and then during an eclipse got a download to emulate her energy healing work through technology, and started working with computer programmers and scientists to create the software. And then it's very interesting because she was very adamant about the precise alignment of the equipment, which actually correlates very deeply into scalar technology. And it's very interesting because not many people knew about scalar technology in the 90s, the 80s. It became more popular once the internet was broadly around, after maybe 2010, people started to be like, oh, scalar. And so we were, in about 1999, she created her first center in Colorado. And I think it was 8 units in like a basement of a house. I was 16 at the time, roughly. And, I was living with my dad, moved back to my mom's, and I show up and she's got all this computer technology in this room with these screens going, and I'm just like, all right. But then people would come over and have these profound healing experiences, and so I was like, all right, I'm not sure if my mom's crazy or brilliant or both. As a teenager, you're just kind of like, oh, all right, mom. And then the Tesla Society came. They're actually based in Colorado, so they're actually neighbors at the time, which was interesting, and came and tested the fields and said it was scalar. And I don't think she actually set out to create scalar. It was just something that occurred. She knew she had something that would create a healing effect, and that was her mission, was just to create a technology that could emulate her work, but on a global scale. So at the time it was one, but the idea was always to have it all around the world, and to create the quantum shift in consciousness, so to allow for evolution on the planet. That was pretty much her primary mission, was just to heal the world. So it was always interesting growing up, and just seeing people come through. And at one point, the U.S. government came through when it first turned on, before I arrived from living with my dad. Apparently, the technology, the first system looked like a nuclear sub on land, or had that radiologic signature for some reason from like satellites. So like the country went into DEFCON 4. The Men in Black showed up, and knock on her door, and the little blonde lady opens the door, and she's like, hi, and they're like, so they want to inspect it, so they send some scientists to inspect, realize it wasn't a nuclear device, and it was creating more of like a cold fusion reaction that showed up on their equipment. And even today, one of the scientists, the head of science at the time, who was working for the government, actually is one of our friends, so he like rehashes the story sometimes. And he's like, yeah, I actually signed off to make sure that your mom didn't get fined like millions of dollars for, the bill for all these government agencies to converge on your house. So it's like an interesting story. Actually, I think you might be the first to actually capture this story on camera. But it just shows the history of what occurred. And then as we installed systems all over the U.S., like some people would report like a black helicopter flying over. And from what I understand, they calibrated their equipment now so that they know what our system is, and they can actually distinguish an actual nuclear event from an EE system being turned on, which is good because we don't need people showing up at the door like, do you have a reactor in there, sir? I mean, make for great content and entertainment, but probably not great for stress. So 16, I was in high school, ended up dropping out. And my mom's ex-husband was doing the laser calibration. Actually, at that time, he was using tape measures and strings to calibrate the equipment because the calibration needs to be within 1/16 of an inch accuracy. And we've now refined that down to 1/32 with newer laser technology. So he's like, well, you need to learn this because I don't like doing it. I'm like, all right. So first thing I did is I go on the internet and I find some lasers and create the laser calibration protocol. And from there it was just a really, really slow build, mostly in just human psychological adoption to accepting technology. Because back then, energy medicine, crystals, woo-woo, it was seen as like super, super fringe, like beyond fringe. And over the years, the fringe slowly came down to, oh, well, this is interesting. And then more people adopted. We had a lot of doctors, scientists, physicists that were really fascinated because they understood what was going on with Scalar. The broad public didn't. It was something that was a refined science that only later became like commonly taught in schools and colleges. So they're like, oh, we know exactly what you're doing, and that's really fascinating. General public was just like, oh, you've got a bunch of screens in your room, you're crazy. Move further into the future as energy medicine, frequency, vibration technologies became really popular, and then we just we were on a casual, nice, good, slow build as a company each year, doing better. And then Jason shows up and does the interview with my mom, and then it exploded. It just went parabolic.
And that was about 2 years ago?
It was exactly 2 years ago in May, so we're just past that mark, yeah.
And how many systems are out there now?
Open centers for public use is over 400. I've lost count of the private systems around the world, but there's quite a few. I think our back order list is will at current, actually what's on the books, we'll have 500 to 600 public centers globally, probably by the end of the year.
Okay. So let's go back and can you explain what scalar energy is in the first place, and how was it tested for originally?
I actually don't know what the equipment the Tesla Society brought in. I wasn't there for that, and I was quite young. That's 24 years ago. But over the years, people have brought in specialized oscilloscopes. Scalar is, by scientific or academic notations, visible by effect. So you can't directly measure scalar because it's fifth dimensional. We're three-dimensional. So most of our modalities are measuring linear wave patterns, which are, A to B, they're on one plane. Fifth dimensions adds two more dimensions to 3 dimensions. So it's normal equipment doesn't measure scale, but it's visible by effect. So one of the things you'll see with scalar technologies is a diminishment of normal linear frequencies. So if you come in here and you try to measure 60 hertz, you won't typically, some meters, it's very interesting, will measure the 60 hertz. Others will measure 0. And then really good ones will actually measure the ducking of 60 hertz down to like 30 or 20. And I call this phasing, because it exists in here. Like you can use your phone, but the radiation, you'll notice the heat is less in the technology, and it won't bother you or make your ears ring. So there's a phasing that occurs with scalar. So it's causing linear frequencies to phase in and out of existence or go between dimensions. So it's there but not there, and they call that like a null field zone. So you see that, and then other things that are noticeable with scalar is electrical activity. So you look at gas discharge visualization, or GDV, or Kirlian photography, and so you say you put some water in here and you do a before and after, you'll notice the electrical charge on the bottle that's been in the system is 3, 4, 5, 10x from the non. So you're seeing a wireless transmission of energy, which is a really easy just visual, and there's plenty of that on the internet. So those are the ways you know that the scalar is occurring. And then get back to your point of what is scalar. So if you look at old documents online, scalar is when you take an opposing electromagnetic field of equal mass. So we'll say X mass and X mass, not X.111, but X and X. They collide, create a cancellation effect, or phase conjugate wave pairing, which is easier to picture as a cancellation. So two things hit, and then they create something new or dissipate. So it's 0 point, and that's where cancellation or 0 point comes from. So with our technology, instead of having 2 points of electromagnetic collision, we require 4 as a minimum. So you don't have any system smaller than a 4 unit, and then we go up to 24, and then some people get bougie and go up to 48. But each of these are all precisely aligned to create a phase conjugate wave pairing, so they cancel each other out or create that 0 point or scalar effect. So 4 points versus 2, if you put a house on 2 posts, it's going to fall over one way. It's wobbly. It's not balanced, and it's not stable. With 4 points, we create a stable scalar field, which is really important because over the years they've just done we'll do 2, and that's a very linear way of thinking. And so the more points you add to a field in say quantum physics, you look at a lot of fusion reactors. It's not too like lasers colliding. The original studies kind of like with that, but they've actually got multiple vectors, and typically 8 or more. It's really interesting to look at some of those fusion chambers because it's almost always 8 or more. And it's interesting, you have a 24 unit system, so you've actually got 6 points of collision on one side and 6 on the other, and then 6 and 6 balancing it out. So you're past 8 actually at your fusion points. So the balanced scalar effect is really the bread and butter of why our technology became, I think, really popular, is because we created a stable scalar field. And then on the scalar field, what you're seeing running on the screens is the biophotonics. And so we're colliding photons in the system also at those same degrees of phase conjugate wave pairing. And if you look at modern science right now, this is, the biggest thing is collision of photons. What's CERN doing, which is, the grandfather god of all science right now on the planet, is all done at CERN, the highest level of quantum physics. And what are they doing? They're speeding up photons and colliding them. And it's funny if you read the research too, because they'll say they're not measuring the collision of the photons because it's unmeasurable, which means it's scalar or fifth dimensional or quantum. They're measuring the atmosphere around where the collision is occurring because that's the only thing that is visible by effect. So they're using all the highest modern equipment in the world just to measure what's happening around the collision of the particle, which is, I always just found fascinating because it's like, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about. Most people probably read that and like, that doesn't make any sense. But it's quantum physics. It doesn't make sense. It's all theoretical, and you're just kind of like trying to figure out ways to understand things that are above you. So fifth dimension, because we're 3D, we're very linear in our ability to perceive things. So you kind of have to like twist and artistically view things. And it's interesting. Most of the greatest scientists in the world will say you have to understand art and mathematics and a broad spectrum of perception to really understand science. Because if you just look at it as equations on a paper, you don't really go very far. You just get stuck in a linear math problem.
Right. Is it safe to say the scalar waves are available everywhere?
Everywhere.
All over, like, covering Earth and...
Well, I mean, I have a theory, and I believe our brains are actually scalar, and that's why they're so powerful, because, believe in the power of thought. I think thought goes beyond linear pathways, and I think it is toroidal, and you create a field of consciousness with your mind. So when you embed and you say you want to manifest or project, I believe we are actually toroidal and scalar in nature. I think our whole body is, but primarily I like to look at the brain as a torus broadcasting, because when I send out a thought, sometimes it might be linear and it might be me just talking to you. But if I'm, say, praying to God at night, I'm praying to everything around me because, God or the universe is all around us. So I believe scalar is everywhere. And I think that scalar is actually the glue that holds together all of existence. So the table or you, I think, is held together by scalar, and then the rest is just matter. So your carbon and your minerals and the water, all the elements are held together by the informational fields of scalar. So I think, and that's probably why scalar fields are so important for the body, is that wireless transmission is your body naturally is being beaten down, especially in society now, by electrosmog, electropollution, just all the frequencies that are floating around, The water's not as healthy as it should be. The foods we're eating don't have the mineral content that it should, and it's just processed. And most people aren't on a day-to-day. Most people are more bombarded than any point in history because technology is advancing, food processes are advancing and going large scale and mainstream instead of farm to table. At this point, we need all the edge we can get energetically. And so when you insert wireless energy into an atmosphere, your body as an antenna naturally picks up the atmosphere around you, whether you know it or not, and will uptake it and utilize it. So you can be in an unhealthy environment or a healthy environment. It's just a matter of you're choosing on which direction you choose to go. So hopefully people will choose to go into scalar technologies, and hopefully vibrational energy medicines will evolve even past what we're doing, and people will utilize that as like a daily routine or workout or lifestyle that enters into households worldwide. Because at this point, you're either on a spectrum of moving towards health and longevity, or on a bad trajectory towards a quicker death and disease.
Yeah, and would you say scalar is 0 point?
It's the same thing. So in audio, they have phase cancellation. So if you point speakers at each other, the waves will collide and it'll stop. And you'll notice that if you stand in the middle, it's very loud. But then you move out of phase, and the audio is not as loud. So it's a great visual representation of what occurs with scalar or 0 point. Is when you have those collisions, and here we have it at 4 points, it's causing 0 point or scalar. So 0 point and scalar are the same thing. I like to use the term cancellation though, because it allows people to like picture, you can think about if you take two identical cars being driven by like an AI, so that they're colliding they start and accelerate at the exact same speed. When they collide, there isn't like a spin or a mesh, it's a direct stop. And what happens? The cars no longer exist, and you have two lumps of metal.
Yeah.
Cancellation.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the scalar and photons. Mm-hmm. Is there any other technologies that are built into this?
So the language of the universe is math. So there are a lot of mathematical algorithms running, whether you know it or not. And that's part of why people go, why is the screen going up and down and change the direction? So we've utilized the Fibonacci sequence and golden ratios. So there are the ancient maths that are associated with life embedded into the technology. I think that's an important part. And then the glyphs you see on the screen are what we call cellular communication. So my mom, through her work over the years as a healer, came up with modalities to heal people. And I'll leave it vague that way. But I call it cellular communication. Is when you can talk to a body and give it information that will assist it in evolving or being healthy or having a more positive outlook through psychology. Subconsciously, energy translates to you having a more brain activity, increased function in all your organs, anti-aging effects. If you had more energy, the interesting thing, and this kind of deviates from what the modalities, which I more or less covered, is we live in a toxic society. Most people are in fight, flight, or fright syndrome. 95% of their energy is being taken just to utilize a coping mechanism. So instead of you having 100% energy to focus on work, love, relationship, creativity, art, 95% of your energy is being internalized, stored, and used just to cope with how bad reality is around you. And so we've done some psychological studies, and people's stress levels and coping mechanisms at that flight or fright response is not there. So you're actually in a space where you're going to be using a higher percentage of your internal energy for actually doing your purpose versus just coping.
Right. And you attribute that to the glyphs, did you say?
It's the whole holistic effect that you have with the technology. So I think a lot of it has to do with the scalar nullification zone. So you're no longer being as bombarded by the world, and your body has now an extra burst of energy. So we're increasing cellular energy. So when you have that, your body is like, oh, I have extra energy now, whether it's to cope with reality or just go out and do things. The interesting thing too is looking at EEGs. Electrical activity in the brain while in the system is increased. if people just use 1, 2, 3%, I mean, that's a lot because most people are only using 3, 4, 5% of their brain. 5 is like a high percentage. A lot of our brain is inactive and dormant. If you could start using, or society could start using 5 to 10% of their brain, I mean, that's where superhuman abilities come out, where, you know, you can read people's minds, or maybe even get to the point of moving objects with your mind. Or I like to use the Force. I joke with my sister is because I'll think of something and she'll hand me something. I'm like, it was almost like telekinesis. I use the Force. I didn't actually physically use energy to bring the water bottle to me, but she knew that I wanted it in that moment and handed it to me. And I was like, ah, yes, Jedi tricks. Getting closer, but not quite fully to, you know.
Yeah, I think we all have that innate ability to, communicate and with the body and all of the living beings surrounding us and within us. And so we're just at the kind of like the tipping point of all of this, and identifying and accepting I don't even know if technology is the right word for this, right?
Everything's a technology. I think meditation would be classified as a technology, and a lot of people wouldn't. They'd be like, "Oh, that's a practice," but you know, we just practiced installing this equipment, so to speak. So everything is a technology if you perceive it as such. Your body is a technology. It's a highly advanced biological technology. Your brain, as I said, is an advanced receiver antenna. It's just biological. So people attribute hardware as technology and not biology, but I think they're the same. Once you break things down, it's all very similar. And we are living in an interesting time where there's more information flowing freely. So lost teachings from like ancient mystery schools are being more broadly shared. Is, you know, back in the day, say the 50s, the martial arts and qigong, not a lot of people knew about it, and then it broadly became popular. So these are like old teachings of how to evolve, like qigong, meditation, yoga. These all became more mainstream recently. Like, we're super behind on where we could be because people just weren't sharing enough information,
Right.
or technology.
And people are becoming more familiar with frequencies, and you mentioned the frequencies that were implemented in this technology, so the golden ratio and the Fibonacci
similar
sequence.
thing, yeah.
How are those? So I look at those as codes for growth and life, things like this. But how do you think that those affect us?
Well, with our technology, I would see it as an interface. So the clearer the channel with an interface, the more benefit you're going to get. So again, math being the language of the universe, our bodies respond to math, and that's why people resonate with, like, I mean, they look at their phone and see 11:11, they get a little cheery. They're like, oh, 11:11, or it's 3:33. Math ties into the human existence and the universe intrinsically, because it's the only thing that it doesn't ever change. So our language might be different, but math will always be the same and done the same. It might look at different characters, but 1 + 1 will always be 1 + 1 throughout existence. Right. And then when you look at the Fibonacci golden ratios, it's found in everything in life. You look at a seashell, and it's built out of the Fibonacci. The sequences there. You look at trees and different things. All these ratios exist all throughout life. So it seems to be the interface of at least our planet and maybe the universe. These ratios are how you tie to life and growth.
Right. So conceivably, the more of those frequencies that we're enveloped in, then it's promoting, it's giving information to our DNA or to this.
I think it has a lot to do with like resonance, and like maybe a weird way of thinking about being like the SIM card in your phone. So while our technology is not trying to connect to your phone, it's trying to connect to biology. So the more markers that we put into resonant biology, the more your body's going to respond to it. Versus if we throw, say, signals at you that are at a frequency that you don't like, maybe 60 hertz, which is not healthy for the human body, your body's going to rebel against it. Versus if we throw positive things at you, your body's going to be like, oh, cool, all right. Just like the sun, for instance. You get, photosynthesis. You in the sun, you get vitamin D. The body converts it to vitamin D, it's like, oh, I like this, so I'm going to use this. It's a similar thing with energy medicine. Is like body goes, ooh, I'm vibing with this. I resonate with this. Let's do something with it.
Yeah. And what kind of who do you recommend the EE system to?
I mean, so it's disheartening that so many people that come to the system are ill, because, and people will come in here and they'll be like, well, I want to remove 40 years of age and damage that I've done in a matter of hours. Everyone wants a quick fix. People come in here massively degenerated and they're expecting miracles, and we do get the miracles, and a lot of people see those on the internet, and then if they don't get the same miracle, they get a little disheartened. This should really be a preventative. This should be something that it's just like the gym. If you're 400 pounds and you go to the gym for 4 hours in a week, and you go, oh, I'm not skinny. It's like, well, you should have been going to the gym 4 hours a week throughout your life to prevent getting to being obese. Right. I feel the same way with this technology. And when it comes back to EEG and electrical activity in the brain, children should be in this technology because they're going to have the ability to comprehend and uptake knowledge at a higher pace, say, than someone who's not going in the technology. They're going to outperform the other kids in the school if they're in the technology. But yet, put it in the schools. And we've been trying to do that, but with the bureaucratic red tape, they're like, oh, well, we don't know. We might get sued.
Yeah, unfortunately, humans aren't, most of the people aren't at the point where they're looking at prevention, so everything is, even with nutrition and supplements and exercise, as you said, it's, you have a problem and people move out of pain. So you have some kind of a problem you want to overcome. But I really started looking into energy systems when, working with top champion athletes, and the difference between a champion athlete and the average Joe is, I found anyway, is they spend most of their day with the intention to do the best for themselves, right? The body. So they're always looking for the best food to eat, the best trainer, the best facilities. They're doing maintenance. They're doing everything they can, every modality they
because
can.
you just mentioned all physical aspects.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of these athletes that focus purely on the physical and not on the spiritual. And there's an MMA fighter that was devout like Muslim, and basically he went to the gym and he prayed. That's all he did. And he never lost a single fight. So when people actually incorporate the full sphere of your existence, mind, body, spirit, that's when you really see a higher level of physical reaction. And it's interesting with the technology because someone was like, oh yeah, well, my agility got stronger after using the system. And I told him, like, was it your physical agility that got stronger, or was it your brain had more energy so it perceived things quicker? So it's like, I can be physically fast, but if I'm not mentally fast and have the ability to calculate, say, I throw you a football, and you could be physically fast to grab the football, but if you're not mentally fast to calculate where the football is going, it's just kind of a matter of luck of being quick, because your brain's going to calculate in real time by the millisecond if you're smart, and by the second if maybe you're not smart. And when a ball is flying, it's 1.2 seconds maybe. So those milliseconds make a huge difference in calculating where you're going to catch it. And that's why I really like the analogy of the brain having more energy here, because I notice the same thing is my speech gets faster in the technology, and my ability to react in real time is enhanced in the technology. So a lot of people are focused on the physical, which is great, but you have to focus on everything that is your body, which is spiritual, mental, and physical. And there are other spheres we might talk about, but those are the main ones.
Exactly. And observing all of these athletes, a professional athlete, they're the top 1% physically. So once you get to that level, there's very little room for growth that we found. You're struggling to put on, to gain 50 grams of muscle. Right?
You're trying to push that extra 1% as hard as you can.
Yeah, and it's all it's based in the physical world, so it's just like a grind, right? It's like grind it. But with the top champions, they have the spiritual down pat, whether they know it or not, whether they acknowledge it or not, because they're showing just love to their body, right? So they're just based in I see it as like a cocoon of love.
Hmm.
And when you're at that point where you will not do anything that's harmful to the body, then you're not going to do that harmful to anybody, right? So it's interesting parallel, but that's why I saw that people can really, there's room for growth, like I said, in the physical realm, it's like you're fighting for millimeters, but we've overlooked the, if you want to call it spiritual, or if you want to get into
Mental, mind, body, spiritual,
right,
whatever you want to label it. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what led me to this technology as well, right? But okay, so we have all of these technologies embedded in here, and tons of success stories, obviously. What about, a lot of people need to see evidence, like published studies and things like that. Can you talk about?
So, I mean, the first medical, it was more of like a safety study, was done like, I think, 2001 with Dr. Vega. There's, a lot of research on our website as far as, and it's like 20 years and it's all third party. None of it was affected by us. We just saw what happened in the world where pharmaceutical companies basically paid to push things into the market. It's like if you have enough money, you can make anyone say anything. So all of ours is third party, and none of it was leaned into by us. So we had no effect on it. So, and it was all positive. Only one is peer reviewed and published, and that's Dr. Shintani. He had an autistic kid that was suffering from a lot of grand mal seizures on a daily basis. And the first, so he published that. And the only reason he was allowed to publish it because it's complementary medicine is because it was an autistic kid. Placebos do not work on autistics, which is really interesting. And I was like, all right, well, at least it's published. But we've had a lot of really great stories from the autistic community. I won't dive into them, and I like hearing these stories because in Western medicine or around the world, if you have autism, they say good luck. They don't say we have a protocol. There's no drug. Pretty much nothing works in normal culture, and we're seeing positive results with our technology, which is very profound for something that has no standard operating procedure in the medical community. And we have some upcoming studies. So Dr. Kratkov is going to be getting involved with us throughout a large-scale center, like across the world, like multiple centers across the world, and utilizing the GDV camera. Gives you real-time imaging of different metrics. That'll probably be a year out before that's done. Currently, Jenny Xu is doing a telomere study. She did just herself as a brief pilot, and her biological age started slowly going down, and after 3 months, she was 23 years younger on a biological age, and this was measured primarily at looking at the length of the telomeres. So in modern science right now, lengthening telomeres is a big deal, and people are taking all kinds of different peptides and medicines to try and lengthen telomeres because it's a broad anti-aging effect. So if you can keep your telomeres long, you have longevity, and so as you grow older, your telomeres naturally shrink. So she's I forget her age, is it like 50s or 60s, but her biological age after 3 months dropped 20 years. So there's not a lot that in the world that can do that. So you see really great anti-aging effects with the technology.
And you have some, not published studies, but you have graphs showing improvements, blood flow in the brain, and
so yeah, the EEGs, those are on the website, EESystem.com or unifiedhealing.com. There's actually one long time ago was done in Korea, and they showed after 15 minutes activation in the brain states. Dr. Nancy White in Texas had a write-up too as well, showing electrical activity in the brain, and has the images of what's occurring. For those who know what they look like, it's very sciencey, but she gives some explanation of increased electrical activity in the brain. The blood work, there's a lot of people that have done live blood cell analysis looking at the blood. And it's profound to see rapid oxygenation in the blood after just going into a system. Normally you need to go in like a hyperbaric chamber, or maybe go scuba diving or something where you're on increased oxygen flow through a tank. But you get that with the technology, and it reduces surface tension in water, and your blood is essentially water with different elements in it. So you're reducing the surface tension in the body, so the blood's flowing more fluidly. So we've had people with like sickle cell show positive results in sickle cells where the blood's irregularly shaped and like catches on it and clumps up very rapidly. And you know, most people, you've got mold, bacteria, infections, things like this that cause a clumping. So we see that in the live blood imaging before and after, and it's just like an hour, sometimes 2 hours of before and afters. And looking at the imaging, it's night and day. It goes from clumped to unclumped. So that's a really great real-time way of just looking at the effects of the technology through the blood. And it's interesting because, you know, people might come into the system and be like, well, I didn't really feel anything, but you know, you don't feel a lot from taking hormone therapy or vitamin D or vitamin C or any of the supplements that you know you should be taking, or iron, but you can see it in the biology, and these things are degenerative to not keep in balance. So whether you feel something in the technology or not, you can actually see that it's providing a healthy benefit through sciences.
So Michael, could you explain a little bit about the cellular voltage and how that plays a major part in our health and vitality?
Yeah, so, and it's funny because we keep circling to like 70 to 90 millivolts is the optimal range, and technically it's minus 70 to 90 millivolts. So we'll just throw that out there for the internet trolls. Optimally, you want to be in 70 to 90 millivolts. Cancer starts existing when you go sub 20. So if you can keep your cell millivoltage high, and in some cases, if it's super low and you come in here, you might reverse disease. I won't make that claim, but you might. But ideally, back to preventative. If people, you know, worked out in the EESystem or just came in to relax more often and kept their cell millivoltage high, the likelihood of them getting health problems would drastically diminish.
Is there any way to test that? Test the
cell millivoltage?
Yeah.
So the study I mentioned with Dr. Krakow and the GDV BioWell, they can show cellular millivoltage. So we've done that through similar technologies and that technology. So yeah, you can actually show cell millivoltage before and after using the GDV technology.
And where do you see the future of this technology? So any upgrades, and how would you like it? How would you like people to use it all over the world eventually?
I mean, you know, before we went viral, I was getting visions of the technology everywhere, like coffee shops, the sides of buildings and schools, airports. I think it would be beneficial for, you know, society as a whole to get it in small increments as they're just passing through society, versus having to go to a room to do it. And you know, that's why it's so popular for people to sleep in the technologies, because they don't have to take time out of their schedule. But imagine if you went to bed for 8 hours a night and then you woke up with bigger biceps and, you know, nicer abs. Like, so we're not talking about physical workout here, more of an energetic, but it's kind of the similar perspective there. So like, you know, if we lived in a healthy society where health was programmed into society, where so you're going to the mall and there's technologies there that are just trying to stimulate society to be healthier, you get towards like that age of love utopian kind of thing where society is just not designed to do that. It's designed to promote consumption of goods, and you know, the medical model wants you to take all their drugs, which have side effects that require you to take more of their drugs and cause degradation in your liver and kidney, and different. You might lose eyesight, or erectile dysfunction might occur. Like, you look at the side effects of modern medicine, and it's just like, well, I mean, I might be in less pain, but then something else doesn't work. Like, you're trading. It's kind of like a law of alchemy. You're burning one thing to create another thing. So that's the nice thing about energy medicine and the EESystem is you're not losing anything. You're only gaining. It's only positive. It's only healthy. You might detox as a side effect, but that's good. The less junk in your bloodstream, less toxins in your body, the healthier you'll be. So I'd like to see it so that it's a societal practice. I'm not sure if that'll happen or if it'll take 10 or 20 years. In the short term, you know, looking at aesthetical features, because the technology does look extremely industrial currently. You know, we went viral, and it was hard to grow the look and feel of the technology while just reaching demand, because there's, you know, we're still back ordered for almost a year after 2 years. The demand is so high, so we're just trying to streamline the technology being in places, but we're working on some side panels for the racks that'll make them look a little prettier. We're working on software updates to incorporate more modalities. We're working on investing in some other technologies, scalar related, that could amplify the effects of our technology. Just incorporating other energy modalities. Like if you went to an EESystem, it might be beneficial if there was other modalities, whether it be cold plunges, saunas, red light therapies. The nice thing about the technology is it works well with other things. Some people would go to the sauna, but it is actually more beneficial to use the sauna and then go to the cold plunge. Maybe not everyone's that ballsy because they're afraid of the cold plunge. The nice thing about our technology is you don't need to sweat and you don't need to freeze. But it would be cool to incorporate other energy modalities, PEMF, Rife, some of the older stuff. I'm on the fence with Rife a little because, it's very frequency specific, but looking into ways to possibly incorporate other modalities into the system and have it even maybe bolt onto the current rack systems and align similar to our stuff. These are definitely years down the line, and we're just in like R&D and theoretical phases at the moment. But I do want to evolve EESystem into a very trusted, larger brand for wellness. Sound healing. Sound is extremely powerful, and it helps people in this society with their ADD. So some people might come into the system and they want to be on their phone or something, but maybe we can provide some meditative or binaural or just frequency specific music to help their brain stop chattering. Because a lot of people they become ADD with society with the constant interactions on their phone. There's like, I'm constantly looking for that little hit of dopamine or serotonin by being on my phone, and all the apps, social medias are designed that way too, and so people aren't going within. They're constantly externalizing their energy into non useful technologies, is just for that quick little hit of serotonin.
Yeah. And how would you compare this technology to a pristine natural environment? So I like to, when I go out to the mountains or near water, I'm hit with all those frequencies that brings me into a meditative state, and I'm relaxed. And yeah, how would you compare that with?
I mean, so you're talking about a no technology zone, basically. You're going into nature, and nature is extremely powerful, and you can resonate with those energies and not be bombarded by your Wi-Fi. Hopefully you leave your phone somewhere else and you're not there with it, because then your phone has signal pretty much everywhere. There are those energies that are like, it's very rare to find a place on this planet at this point where you're not going to get signal. Right. If your phone can get signal, you're being bombarded by some extent. It might not be as if you bad as if you're in a city where it's everywhere. But at this point, we have Starlink too, which is beaming down 5G from the sky, pretty much the whole planet at this point. I think the coverage is literally everywhere now. So yeah, nature is amazing. It's a healing experience. You connect with the sound of nature, the feel of nature, the energy of nature. It's a powerful technology, although not really being a technology, but it kind of is in a sense. Extremely meditative, extremely beneficial. But most people don't take time to go into nature. Right. And it's hard to find. Nature is becoming scarcer and scarcer as cities grow bigger and bigger. So it's like you literally got to go climb a mountain.
Yeah, kind of my simple explanation is this is bringing nature, like pristine, all of the energies and the frequencies
into society.
Into home or into the cities, where that's kind of my simple explanation in my own mind.
I mean, the nutshell that has worked for me over the years of explaining it just like quickly is it generates a bioactive field of energy that allows for cellular regeneration. It's a wireless transmission of energy that you don't need to get connected to anything. It's kind of like Star Trek medicine. And then people are like, all right, well, that's a cool, because it takes, unfortunately, the elevator pitch for scalar technologies or energy medicines aren't easy. You're like, I need a 1 minute or a 2 minute. It's like, well, do you have about 20?
At least.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you. Take care.